Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is George.
My name is Tom.
And my name is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Tom, I take it that your mirth is as a result of having noticed Adam's Cookie Monster coffee cup.
Yeah, I don't know why. Just Adam, lifting up his cup of coffee, which just has the Cookie Monster on it. All I could hear in my brain was just of eating cookies. I don't know. Brains do weird things sometimes. Like, that's all I could think about. That's all my brain wanted to think about. I want cookies now.
Maybe I did that deliberately, Tom. Maybe I knew that you would have that reaction, and I thought, let's create some comedy at the start of the show.
You do know that you do know that I have a problem with cookies, and you were exploiting my recovery by just showing me someone gorging on my favorite vice, and frankly, I find it offensive.
Do you have a cookie addiction? Is that what we're saying? Is that you are a recovering cookie addict? Is that how it's happening? Yeah. Right. Okay.
Well, that's what I was
going. One more time for effect. I'll just pan this in front of the camera.
Yeah. There it is.
And I'll have a little slip.
That's great for an audio medium. The first step, Tom, is admitting you've got a problem. So I'm proud of you that you've come forward on the show and been able to sort of tell us about your problems there. Speaking of brains, no, I shan't let you cut in there. Speaking of brains doing weird things, Donald Trump.
That's putting it mildly.
Yeah, so you might have heard this week that there was a debate between Donald Trump and one Kamala Harris for the presidential race, which is set to happen in I think it's November 5th, so coming up next couple of months. So timelines are coming up.
It's like 7 weeks or something, I think now.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Timelines tightening up. So, and this debate was essentially catastrophic.
And it's the first one since the Democrats did the old switcheroo when they decided that Joe Blow was not fit to run. Like, finally they noticed. I think a lot of people kind of noticed a while ago.
Yeah, but, and as bad as that debate was with Joe Biden staring mouth agape, giving 25th Amendment face, as bad as that was for Joe Biden, this is how bad this debate was for Donald Trump. Because all you really need to combat Donald Trump is someone who can complete a sentence. And Kamala Harris can do that. There is a saying in American electoral politics when they compare specific candidates against a generic candidate, right? I think we've talked about this on the show before. So it's like Donald Trump versus, Gavin Newsom versus Kamala Harris versus whatever. And they also do Donald Trump versus generic Democrat. Right?
The pile of clothes at the end of the bed.
And they're just like someone who's a Democrat and could be anyone. Yeah, literally could be, could be anything. And and generic Democrat generally polls pretty well against Donald Trump. And that seems to be more or less the space that Kamala Harris is occupying at the moment, which is like, I haven't really got a lot of specific policy proposal plans, but also I am generic Democrat, not Donald Trump. And that seems to be working for the most part.
I don't know, George. At the end of the debate, he claimed victory, and he's like, "Why do I need to do another one? Because I obviously won." So if you only saw that headline, you'd think, "Well, he must have smashed her."
The team that is working the refs afterwards is always the team that lost. Can I just say, when the Trump is like, "We won. We had so many numbers: 61, 90%, 89%," and people just like, "What percent? What numbers? What are you talking about?" Yeah, we won. We got the numbers, and everyone was like, even the people, even like the hosts on Fox News. Like, Brit Hume and like all these conservative commentators, even they were like, yeah, look, it wasn't a good night. And we have data on this, like the information about the they call it the crawler, where basically you have people sitting there watching the debate. All of the major news networks have a bunch of undecided voters in a room, and they give them a dial, and they say like, what's your sentiment towards like this person while they're talking?
It's the worm.
It's the worm, exactly right. Yes, Australian political junkies will remember the worm from back in the day. Do we still have the worm? I don't think so.
I don't think they do the worm. No.
And where it basically shows it's like a graph, like a worm on the screen I love the liveness of that, where it shows the sentiment based on what the people are actually saying as they're saying it. But this is after the fact, right? In America, they tell you what they think. And like overwhelmingly 2/3 of the people across all major networks said that Donald Trump lost the debate and Kamala Harris won the debate. Like it was a thumping. And I think it was largely due to the fact that Kamala Harris, rather than feeling the need to answer any specific policy questions and put herself in the headlights like Hillary Clinton, where they say, well, what's your plan for this, Hillary? And Hillary says, well, I've got here's my 54-point plan, joke based on a real example. Basically, Kamala Harris said, yeah, I don't know about all that, but his rally sizes are real small, hey. And he goes, hang on, let me answer that question by talking about my rallies for another 3 to 5 minutes, looking like a crazy old bastard. Like, it was less of a trap that she set for him as much as it was like a cartoon, like Wile E. Coyote painting a hole on the side of a brick wall for the Roadrunner. You know what I mean? Like, it was a Roadrunner rather. Paint. You know what I'm saying? It was less of an intricately laid trap as it was like an Acme anvil being dropped onto Donald Trump, and he just like couldn't avoid. He couldn't steer away from the hole in the. It's one of those things that, like, when you're a motorcyclist, they tell you, don't look at the thing that you're trying to avoid. Because when you're turning and when you're steering, if you're looking at the hole in the ground or if you're looking at the bend in the road, you will steer towards the thing that you're trying to avoid. That's exactly what Donald Trump was doing.
You want to look where you're going.
Look where you're going.
You want to go.
Where you want to go. Not where you don't want to go. And Donald Trump was like, rallies, you son of a bitch, you got me. So I've got a clip here which goes through some of the debate highlights and lowlights. Mostly lowlights. So we'll play that after a short interlude. Here we go.
Kamala Harris, let's have a good debate.
Nice to see you. Have fun.
Thank you.
Have fun.
And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom.
First, let me respond as to the rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies.
When Congress...
So people don't go to her rallies, but the people that do go to her rallies are paid to be there. And the question was immigration.
Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban.
There she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
the people on television say my dog was taken and used for food.
You talk about extreme.
I saw it on television. So that's referring to a racist conspiracy theory that Haitian immigrants in the town of Springfield, Ohio, are eating people's pets.
That's vintage racism.
That's like 1910s.
That's like foreigners eat animals that we don't.
Yeah.
That's for.
Yeah, it's like, get your paper here, mister. Hear about the Haitian immigrants. Like, it's to hear about it in the latest talkie. Like, that is vintage 1910, like Boardwalk Empire racism. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Needless to say, obviously, not a true thing that's happening. I think Kamala Harris was just like astounded by it. It's just like looking at him like, I can't believe he's doing this to himself. Like, why?
Yeah, it is something that I appreciated, I guess, from what I watched of the debate, that, while someone else might be like, no, I'm going to be measured and professional and not like openly laugh at how insane the other guy is sounding. It's like, no, I appreciated that we could see her face the entire time, and she's pulling faces, being like,
it's a deliberate strategy.
Of course,
sure.
and
it's
one I appreciate.
The weird, they're just weird thing. Like, this is all tied into that campaign. Anyway,
you see, he's also been further reiterating the whole people are eating the dogs conspiracy theory crap. outside
Dig
of this.
deeper. Do it.
Like, oh,
Dig
he's
up, you
dug
idiot.
so much deeper. They're also eating the geese. Did you hear this? He also said they're taking geese from parks.
Oh my god.
The goose
What?
has been cooked, shall we say?
Have you ever seen a goose in a park? They will fucking end you if you just walk over there and try to pick one up.
Anyway, we've got a little bit
Jesus.
more.
All right.
They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy.
She is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says.
Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump.
Yeah. So yeah,
Ooh.
not a great innings for Trump
it-
there. And he said
Was it-
he did say after that there would not be a third debate because they initially planned on two debates with Biden. They had the debate with Biden, which went so bad that they launched Biden into space. And he ended his candidacy as a result. And then they've had the second planned debate, which would have been with Biden just recently. This is the one with Kamala Harris just now. So
Yeah.
she's saying like, yeah, we should definitely, the people deserve another debate. And he's like, no.
Nope.
Please stop. I'm already
Yeah.
dead.
I guess the question I've got is, like, does this affect votes at the end of the day, or is this a storm in an echo chamber within a silo within an Amazon web server?
It
Like,
is definitely impactful for the election. So these debates are generally watched by, millions of people, right? So as a candidate, it's Kamala Harris's biggest kind of attempt to define herself in the eyes of the electorate with, millions of people watching. And I think we're starting to see that in some of the polling results that are coming out this week that, there has been a couple of points swing to her, particularly with regard to independents and people who are undecided. So, and that's exactly the constituency that you want to win over. I don't think there's a lot of people, certainly you're not going to convince Trump voters at this stage, 9 years in. If they were down with him when he descended the escalator in 2015 and talked about Mexicans being rapists, that you're not going to lose them with Haitians eat dogs 9 years later. Like they've been with him the whole time. So I think it's really just about those margins and it's about turnout, making sure that you get Democrats to turn out and vote for you. And for those seats where, they're defined by the margins, by the independents and the undecideds, eating away at those margins as well. And if you do that in enough areas and enough swing states, you can win.
It wasn't necessarily Harris. Like Harris wasn't amazing either. Like her detail and policy was incredibly light.
But also why I wonder why we hold her to that standard of Trump's talking about deporting 11 million people and having camps. And we're like, but where's she going to get the money for a tax plan? It's just she's just held to this completely different standard. So I think in terms of from a tactical perspective, from the Harris campaign's perspective, to be we're actually not going to, they talked about opportunity economy and you heard a little bit in the clip there where they talked about a couple of policy ideas in defending Roe v. Wade and there was some policy in there, but it was very broad strokes, very generic, not getting too bogged down in the detail.
Small target. Yeah.
Small target kind of stuff. We all agree, Americans shouldn't be divided. They should be united and lifted up together. The kind of, I'm not Joe Biden, I'm not Donald Trump, I'm a new thing. Those are all very generic kind of lines that speak to an American centrist kind of electorate. I think that's the way to go. I don't think it doesn't benefit you at this stage to have a Hillary Clinton 54-point plan because honestly, voters like the word policy, but if there's one thing I've learned about the American electorate is they don't actually care about having actual policy. They just hearing the word policy. Yeah. So, they want to hear that someone's got their interests in heart, that, their issues are relevant to them, that they like them, the candidate likes them and they like the candidate. All of these things are much more impactful than looking at someone's, plan on Gaza. It's really not going to move the needle for most voters. Most voters are not single issue voters like that. You will get, in key areas like Michigan where there are a lot of Muslims and Gaza is a single issue vote for them. Yeah, you might have some issues. But the thing is, when you make the contrast against Trump, it's like, well, Trump is way worse on all of these issues. So it's like, well, who are you going to vote for? Are you going to vote for Harris or are you going to vote for Trump? Like, he's not better on these things, on these single issue voter things than she is, right? So
I did rather enjoy, and sentiment, I guess I also shared, because whenever Kamala Harris was talking about not policy, but sort of what they stood for and all that sort of stuff, it was always it's so disappointing. Like, you don't inspire me, but you're not him. So that's where that sort of goes along. But that someone was like, I wish I could vote for the Kamala Harris that Trump says she is. She sounds great.
Comrade Kamala, yeah.
Yeah, just like, she wants to defund the police. She wants to what was one that was like allow gender affirming surgery on prisoners like by force.
Yeah, I didn't have that. I didn't have that on
aliens,
my.
That's right.
State-funded gender affirming surgery on illegal aliens was not on my bingo card for this debate.
I was just like, oh, look, but state-funded gender affirming surgery for people who want it sounds great.
Like just quietly. This is neither here nor there, but that sounds great. Like,
sounds awesome.
Giving free state-funded healthcare to people that need it. Yeah, honestly, sounds pretty. I'm not going to argue with about it because that's besides the point. Sounds pretty good.
Yeah. But then, my God, when they got to the let's talk about Israel and Gaza spot. Yeah. Oh man, that was bad. Like, I remember her first response was just, now let me just remind you, and went into like laborious detail about October 7th.
But that's what I mean. Like that, those are the things that
roll into all this. And
that's not the stuff that resonates. You just want to roll past any of that and just continually show the contrast between me, Kamala, centrist Democrat, former cop, and that fucking crazy guy over there that's talking about eating dogs and cats. Like, that's literally, as much as they can draw the contrast between those two, like, it's to Kamala Harris's. If it's about character, then Kamala Harris wins. If it's about the economy and inflation, then it seems likely that Donald Trump wins. So it's really about who can control the narrative on which side of that divide as to who's going to be successful, I think. So, but yeah, so after that, we had a statement from one Taylor Swift that came out talking about her endorsement of Kamala Harris and
a rare moment, really. Like, people have often talked about Taylly Swift isn't very kind of
apolitical, sort of trying.
Yeah, not very political in her posts and things like that. It was a big deal that she hadn't called out Trump for a fair while during his first run and stuff. People were suspecting, is it your country fandom, country music fandom you're afraid of pissing off, or all that sort of stuff. But it's a big deal.
But, I mean, she did endorse the Biden-Harris ticket last time around. So it's not as though she's been entirely apolitical her entire time. Like, this is she's not been doing rallies and those sorts of things. But, like, for her to come out and say, yes, I support. And it was like quite a gentle endorsement. It's like, I've reviewed the issues that I care about. I care a lot about Tim Walz and his stance on LGBTQI, advancement and all that sort of stuff. I'm voting there, but I would encourage everyone to sort of do their own research and vote, in a way that supports their values, sort of thing. So it wasn't saying like, y'all are a bunch of idiots, vote for Kamala Harris. It was very much, sort of sensitive to, people's different persuasions and understanding that she's got an audience. Taylor Swift is a mega celebrity. She's got an audience that spans both, and she started in country music, right? So you understand that she's got an audience that spans across Republicans and Democrats. But this could be, like a pretty determinative, like, I don't want to say it determines who wins the election, but things like this can shift the balance. When you're talking about a highly polarized electorate, and it's like a couple of places where a few percentage points can make a difference. And
get a few young people out, a few otherwise disengaged people who are like,
here's the thing.
I like Taylor Swift. Yeah.
I think it was YouGov, the website that allows you to register to vote, went from having something like 30,000 people a day to it was like 400,000 people a day after Taylor Swift made this announcement. Like they can
But
see,
it was also after the debate though as well.
yeah, but they can see, they know where the traffic is coming from based on the links. Like she posted links to go to YouGov and go and register to vote. So they can actually track the traffic.
Track the click through. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, the click through came from her post.
Yeah,
Yeah,
literally.
right. That's crazy.
And it shows the research that gets talked about in this article says that 11% of US adults can be persuaded by celebrity endorsement, and about 19% of young adults say the same. So,
Which is terrifying, by the way. But anyway,
but I mean, this is what advertising is. Every time The Rock comes on, the television and spruiks some tequila product that he owns, like there's a reason the celebrity endorsements exist. It's because they work. And if you get a massively popular figure like Taylor Swift. To say that she supports you, that could, in a few percentage points, and Biden won with 40,000 votes across 3 states. So all you need to do is replicate that same coalition and you win, right? So it is very interesting that that she's come out, and B, at this moment of like maximum attention, after the debate. Then something interesting happened, which was, so Elon Musk saw the Taylor Swift announcement. So she signed off like childless cat lady, which is a dig at JD Vance, right? A couple of weeks ago, everyone was talking about how JD Vance was making fun of, quote, childless cat ladies and how they were the bane of everyone's existence. Basically,
and that they were miserable. And
miserable, nasty people that were, sort of ruining the world because they weren't invested in the future because they didn't have kids. It's a whole ludicrous argument. Anyway, so she signs off childless cat lady. Elon Musk then turns around at a mere... just a spry young 53-year-old turns around and then says, as a result of Taylor Swift's endorsement, I'll just pull up the exact quote. I don't want to misquote Elon Musk. Said something to the effect of, here it is, "Fine, Taylor, you win. I will give you a child and guard your cats with my life."
Yeah, very chill.
Elon Musk.
That's hilarious. Look how funny that is.
Elon Musk, the 53-year-old billionaire, offers to impregnate a woman 20 years his junior for espousing a political view that he doesn't appreciate, which is just like cool and normal, I guess. It's like, it's not like he's like, oh, I was a young man. It's like, you're 53, my dude. Like, you need to just chill on the tweets. He is tweeting most hours of the day. Like, you just need to...
I mean, she's got a boyfriend for one, doesn't she?
It comes across like vaguely like sexually menacing, I think, to offer to impregnate someone that has not
like no one else will have you, so fine, I will be the one to do it. Like,
it's
that's
weird,
kind of
right?
the implication I get out of that.
Yeah. Unless he'd argue that he just means he will hand her a child. Like,
he's got enough to spare. So
yeah, that's what I mean. Also, he has enough kids. And none of them want anything.
I'll give you. He just pulls one out by the scruff of the neck. I'll just give you. What's this one? Apache attack helicopter. All right, you go with Taylor.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah, Jesus, just gross behavior.
It's weird behavior. And he also tweeted something about how, like, on the cats and dogs thing, about how, like, if this, tweeted, I think it was footage of people, immigrants looking as though they were eating cats and dogs, and then saying something to the effect of like, oh, if this is the world you want to bring about, like, vote for Kamala Harris. Like, the guy's a fucking weirdo, man. Like, this is weird, off out of pocket behavior.
Said the South African billionaire who's an immigrant to the anyway.
I know, right? Like, the irony of but I mean, none of this stuff, it doesn't even register with these fucking weirdos. Like, it doesn't matter that they hold a perspective that makes no sense and is completely contrary to everything else.
I think a lot of it, it's
like the Trump thing. People don't go to her rallies, and the people that are going to her rallies are being paid. It's like, well, so are people going?
Both those things can't be true.
It's like in the same sentence, he's contradicting his own, logical fallacy that he set up for himself. Like,
I think, a lot of it's just, people look for someone to blame, and at the moment they're blaming the Democrats. And there's a lot of through lines and narratives and racial undertones and other bits and pieces that are tied into it to blame the so-called elite. And this is the other thing, is that there's this, the whole movement around like removing the elite, and somehow Donald Trump's the answer to that. But anyway,
a New York property billionaire is anti-elite somehow. Yeah, okay.
But it seems to be that some people, and I think I was watching a sort of a part of a podcast or a interview about it, and they basically said that, well, The choice is really, pragmatically in terms of what the effect's going to be at the election is it'll be you've got someone who's going to sort of try and respect the world order, so to speak, from an international perspective. They're going to keep things sort of the way they are, likely. And the funny thing is that a lot of Americans don't understand that it's actually in their best interest
100%.
to keep things the way they are.
Because the world order was designed by the Americans.
For America. Yeah. And if you start cutting the legs out of that world order, you're not going to be better off in that situation. Or the alternative is someone who will potentially rip it down or cause chaos. I mean, look, 4 years ago, it didn't all fall to shit, but it you could argue that with more momentum and more, this is the whole Project 2025 thing as an example, with more critical thinking around sort of what they want to do and what the objectives are, and perhaps an emboldened conservative movement, then who knows what they would do. So in reality, like, you could vote for Kamala, but Kamala's not going to be like Democrat Jesus. She's not.
No,
she's a gun owner. She's not going to ban guns. She's not going to do anything like.
She will be generic Democrat, and what? That's fine.
Yeah, that's what I meant before, that Trump was attacking her in the debate saying, quote, she has a plan to defund the police, she has a plan to confiscate everyone's guns, and she has a plan to ban fracking in Pennsylvania and everywhere else. And she was like, no, I don't. I'm like, oh, I wish you did, though. Oh, man.
That'd be pretty sick. One thing
I'd like to meet that lady. She sounds awesome.
Yeah, Comrade Kamala sounds dope. With the speaking about plans, there was another memorable moment from the debate, which wasn't in that highlight reel there, where they talked about Obamacare and repealing Obamacare. And she's like, I don't want to do that. That's crazy. Because there's 45 million Americans that are on Obamacare that would have their healthcare revoked, and you haven't got anything to replace it with. And Donald Trump says, oh yeah, no, I've got something to replace it with. And the moderator was like, okay, so what is your plan? And he said, well, I have the concepts of a plan. Which is, i.e., hey, for anyone who's ever done a third year 3 book report on a book they haven't read, concepts of a plan means no plan.
Yeah, it's just brilliant.
Okay, so Lord of the Flies is about this guy who just loves flies, and he's on an island. There's a pig's head. I can see that from the cover, and he obviously there's flies that gather around the head, and he's the lord of them, and that's it's really about communism. So
communism was the real villain all along.
Was the flies? Yeah. It's pretty deep. Anyway, that's my concept of a book report.
Speaking of deep, do we want to move on? Do we have anything else to say about the election, or are we?
I just really like seeing Donald Trump uncomfortable and just embarrassed, and getting the shit kicked out of him by a woman of color is just it's just beautiful. I like seeing it.
Yeah.
You love to see it.
It's pretty delicious. He seemed the entire time to be really thrown. Like, I guess he's, they've been gearing up to be going up against Joe Biden this entire time, right? And now it's like, oh fuck. Like, actually, my wife Alice pointed out that the very first thing Kamala Harris did was walk up to him and shake his hand, and you could see that he was like, that's not what I expected.
Raggy?
And he was like,
well, they were both at the 9/11 thing. The next day, they were both at the 9/11 memorial and were sort of on good terms, which is kind of weird, but yeah.
Yeah, but just you could see how thrown he was. He was like, oh, she just walked right up to me and shook my hand, and he's like, oh, yeah, have fun.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Have fun is such a wild thing to say to a debate opponent.
I don't mind that. I think that's fine. I don't mind that.
Yeah.
Debates should be fun. I think debates should be fun. Like, I don't know why everyone gets angry and sad about them. Like, they should be an entertaining watch.
I mean, that's what it is. I mean, you can only get you're talking about policy proposals, Tom, and you can only get so deep in like a 1-minute response.
Yeah.
Like there's only so much policy you can really, get in there. But I think to most voters, they like to see someone who can go in and command a room, someone who's in command of the issues, who gives the appearance of, competence and intelligence, and can command a room. That's what they're looking for. They're not really looking for like, oh, what are their policy proposals? I mean, if you actually care about that, you'll do some Googling and look at their website or whatever before you go into the booth. For most people, it's just like, I just want to know that They've got it going on upstairs, that they can trust them with the presidency, you know, that they can command a room and be in charge. And that was the vibe that Kamala Harris gave off. And Donald Trump was the one who is now the one who is the doddering old man. The thing is, it's like, I don't even know, like, do you even want to be president, dude? Like, if you weren't running away from like
Criminal
several
charges.
criminal charges and like potential consecutive life sentences, like, like, would you even be running for this? Because like, the
I think he
things
would
that
because
delivers,
the base, the people around him want him to, and he's one of those people. He's a narcissist. And
it'd be
he
ego, all ego.
Yeah, and he's going to chase the attention. So if the attention is where the presidency is, then
it just doesn't seem like he wants the job of being, like, he wants to win the presidency, but like he doesn't actually want the job of being president, because that's a lot of work. And it just seems like he's not really, when he's like reads his hostage statements about the economy and the most jobs that have ever been seen, he just looks like he just wants to die. His soul is ready to ascend. Like, I just don't, like, it's not a guy who's like hungry for the job of governance. You know what I mean?
Well,
but
didn't we, I forget the sources this came from, but didn't we like get an idea of what his day was like? That is like, oh, you don't see Donnie up until about 11 because he's been up all night rage tweeting while shitting out all the burgers he's had throughout the day, and he has a little nap at like 4 and then watches like 6 hours of Fox News into the evening. Like, he's not actually doing the president stuff.
The problem is, though, is that, like Adam alluded to earlier, the Project 2024 stuff, replacing a bunch of mid-level government functionaries with political appointees. Like, it's not like the John Boltons and the Rex Tillersons. Those guys aren't going to be in the room this time around. It's going to be a bunch of toadies and you know, Trump lackeys that are going to get in there and start fucking shit up from day one. Like, they've got a plan now. So that's what makes it like different and dangerous. I don't think he's any more interested in blowing things up than he was the last time round, but the people he's going to be bringing in with him aren't the A team or the B team of like standard Republican issue, like central casting Republicans that he had last time round. Like this time it's JD Vance. You know, it's only the toadies. It's only the, you know, the sort of ideological lifers that are, you know, that would be coming in with him in his next administration, right? So
Well, they're prepared.
Members of the party, so to speak.
Yes.
Now, I was considering throwing the rundown out and talking about a weapons conference that was here in Melbourne.
Oh, the weapons con. We didn't even put anything in the rundown.
Fuck,
Yeah.
Sure.
So I thought we'd just get your opinions on it. But so basically, for everyone's context, there's basically a defense expo that was happening in Melbourne at the Convention Centre, which is pretty close to CBD. And for about 2 or 3 days, there were large-scale protests. And on day one, and they must have, I don't know, this is where I do wonder sometimes, that the police must have a pretty good intelligence sort of network, because they were saying, the government was saying from the couple of days prior, don't go to the city if you can avoid it. Shit's going to get real. And then, as it turns out, shit did get real, and they were lighting bids on fire, and like 20 police got injured, and about 30, 40 people were arrested, something like that. A lot of pepper spray, and it looked like a bit of police brutality potentially as well. Pretty aggressive response. I mean, I guess you could say the police were provoked.
Just a sprinkling of police brutality, just a sousant of brutality.
I mean, there was, there were allegations of throwing like, acid and stuff at police. So I guess that's fair enough that they were probably provoked to some extent. But I mean, the main protest was around obviously that, Australia doesn't want to be exporting weapons overseas and contributing to current conflicts. Particularly the war in Gaza was one that was a lot of Gazan flags, Palestinian flags,
Flag. Yep.
Floating around. So that was kind of what everyone was doing. What are your opinions on it?
Tom. I
Tom
guess I guess I've only seen just what's getting thrown around in clips and stuff like that. But from a lot of what I'd seen was, while a lot of places were reporting like acid being thrown at police, just sort of
allegedly.
Every all the footage I've seen on the ground, which I mean, obviously are coming from people who are on the protest side of it rather than the police side of it. So of course, like I know there's bias there to like be not representing themselves in certain ways, but they were saying like no one had acid. What? Like people didn't have acid. Like people threw like drinks in people's faces or whatever, but it's not acid. And just people getting pepper sprayed at like point blank range. And I think it really just shows like just from the optics alone, just like having a super like militarized police force. Like, yeah, we say, oh, were they provoked by protesters? How provoked can you be when you've got like, you know, dweebs like me with a sign against you with a riot shield and machine guns?
Yeah, dressed up like black, black noir and tech
yeah,
gear.
just like I feel threatened. Bang, when like you are armed to the teeth.
Yeah.
And,
Well,
like,
definitely
I don't know,
people sort of dressed up in sort of balaclavas and looking a little bit more like they were there to.
But I mean,
dressed in all black, looking like they were there potentially to party, so to speak.
Certainly,
but yes, the police did have a lot of
the police had horses and guns and riot shields, and like the largest police operation in something like 30 years was the stat I saw thrown around.
Which is crazy because like there's this, and then there was like the the CFMEU riots a couple of years ago where they blocked the Westgate Bridge. You know,
didn't see this sort of response. Yeah, no, certainly. Like I do feel as though the heavy-handed police responses are reserved for any kind of like leftist protesters. You know what I mean? Like when it's neo-Nazis, they're like, oh, just keep them separate. Like they've got a right to express their opinions. But you know, when it's like, hey, we shouldn't be sending we shouldn't be sending weapons to Gaza to murder innocent children. They're like, oh, somebody's going to get them fucking clubbing. Like,
yeah. I saw lots of footage where, like, I guess, you know, I'm no expert, but it really seems like a lot of, I think the police force seems to really attract people who are just keen to bash some heads.
Oh, well, on that note, I went to a birthday party the weekend before. And one of the guys,
and it ended in people just beating the shit out of each other. Like this baby's birthday was a bloodbath.
wait till you hear the story, where it was a 1-year-old's birthday, and so the thing is with this is that what happens when you have kids is you end up going to a lot of birthday parties where you don't fucking know anyone. You're just like surrounded by a bunch of adults and a bunch of screaming children kind of running.
The only thing you have in common is that you've all spawned.
They're all, but they're part of the same mother's group or whatever. It's like, okay, I don't know anyone here, but that's fine. So I was just minding Leo. So I ended up talking to this guy who was a cop. And he was like, oh, you're Defence Land Expo. And, you know, he goes, talking about how, you know, they're calling cops in from all over the state. It's going to be like a deal. It's going to be massive. And, just.
Oh, this was ahead of time. What, like, I guess.
This is the week before.
Right, okay. Right, so
and he was basically,
he knew they were getting called in. Wow, okay.
And basically just talking about how much they were looking forward to, like, braining a bunch of people. Like, you know, it's just like, and I was like, haha, cool, see ya.
That's not.
See you later, my guy.
It was the kind of thing where they were. It's obvious, that whatever, because obviously they knew the expo was happening, and they must have. They knew there would be some sort of protest, but I guess
there'd be chatter.
As to what sort of extent did they know that there would be violence? And they've obviously rocked up, as I said, to party because there were pictures of people with pepper spray guns, like paintball looking guns would shoot out. Well, they're not the rubber bullets, but I think they're capsicum spray balls. So they're like paintballs that explode on impact, and they give you.
And you can buy these. You can buy these right inside at the Defence Expo.
Yeah.
Look at all this cool new weaponry.
This was all the cops are coming out with like goodie bags. Like, these are just from like the marketing dude. Like, let's roll.
And now for a live demonstration.
Yeah.
And look, there were pictures as well. There was footage of they were trying to get people in. People had to get into the conference, and the protesters were trying to get in the way of people getting in. Yeah. And then so the police were trying to shepherd them through. And in doing so, there's a footage of this guy in a suit being like protected, and then there's cops just like fucking punching their way through, or just like pushing people out of the way to get through this crowd. Which I feel like I don't know how it was set up down there, but I was like, there's got to be a better way to get people into these conferences safely rather than having to make them run the gauntlet. That seems a bit weird, but
especially if you've had as George was saying, this guy at this party, like them being kind of aware that it's gonna be a difficult situation quite early. Yeah. You'd have a contingency. Like it's different to, everyone will go in the front entrance, and then the morning of, you're like, oh, holy shit, the entrance is blocked by a huge protest. Then you've got to fucking think on your feet. But if clearly, I mean, you are holding in Melbourne, like in Dan Andrews' socialist utopia, as some people would call it.
Yeah. Communist Party Melbourne.
Yeah, you're having a military industrial complex expo in Melbourne,
Yeah.
you'd have to be a freaking moron to think this is going to go ahead without any hiccups.
And you know what? But you know what? Like, I'm sure they've been holding this expo year after year for many years, and it hasn't been an issue. Like, I'm sure
not necessarily. I think it's been one that they've done. I want to say it's a relatively new thing. They've done it for a couple of years, but it hasn't been a.
Hasn't been
it's
like
not like
this.
it's not like the air show where they've done it. It's been going for like 50,
Mm.
60 or how many years it is, right? It's a different sort of kettle of fish.
It feels like a weird thing that we allow to happen. Like, I don't know about you. Like, this is maybe me on my crazy soapbox here of being the eat the rich $1 trillion coin shill that I am. But I feel like I get that militaries exist. Countries have them, and they can have a use. Like, if we were invaded by somebody, I would probably be glad that we have a military to try and maybe do something about that.
To try and delay the inevitable for 2 to 3 days.
Yeah, right. But the idea that we then have a big expo where you go around with a lanyard where they're like, now you see, the thing about these bullets is they don't just like get fired out of guns and kill the guy, but then the bullets will sprout their own legs and find his family and kill them as well. Like, these are better bullets. And like, sign me up, put me down for 1 billion of them or whatever. Like, that kind of thing.
If you just look to our left, you can see, now look at the back of this hippie's head. Now watch it completely blow the fuck out from this bullet. Like,
it is.
Now, that is the
it is
kind
a
of
weird
spread that you don't get with regular bullets. You only get that with hollow points, and that's why you got to, if you want good results, you got to pay a little bit extra. You pay for quality.
I feel like this kind of stuff. So I get that, like, people manufacture these things, and that's a whole other thing of weapons manufacturing and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, the idea of having a big expo at the Melbourne Exhibition Centre for all this sort of stuff just feels wrong on its face for me. I always thought the pitch and the selling of military hardware to governments for their armies and all that sort of stuff, that should be in you got a conference room in some building in Canberra that someone does a PowerPoint presentation about. You don't have a big pump and lights. Like, was it? I don't know. I'm not sure.
It feels very Stark.
Where she read this.
Stark Expo, doesn't it?
Yeah, Stark Industries kind of thing. Alice told me that they were giving people popcorn in a grenade on entry.
Ew.
That's
Stuff like that. And I'll be honest, when she said that, I was like, "Oh, I'm back on board. I want a popcorn grenade." That actually sounds kind of fun. But I don't know.
It's a weird thing, Tom. You're quite right.
It doesn't seem like it should be allowed.
With these kind of conferences, normally it's in a capitalist utopia. You would have lots of suppliers, and then you'd also have lots of buyers, right? And the concept of these conferences, if you go say like the pharmaceutical one that happens every year. Everyone's there, they're mingling, they're talking about supply chains, and they're trying to make a bunch of deals.
Networking, making deals.
The thing with defense stuff is that, I'm sure there are intermediary, there might be missile manufacturers looking for chip suppliers or technology that might go into a vehicle, for instance. So there's that sort of intermediary stuff where they can collaborate, shall we say,
but the customer
to make a better product.
Is government.
But the end customer is just government. Yeah. There's the end consumer is always just the government or maybe state police, right? So it is kind of a weird concept. The only thing I would say that I'm getting a little bit tedious over, and look, some of it's classified information, so we don't know the full extent to this, is that, tedious isn't the right word, but frustrated perhaps, is that Australia isn't really exporting any weapons to Gaza. There's some contracts in place for some stuff, repairing some things. There's some stuff that's classified, and maybe there is in that classified section some stuff that we are sending over there. And we're part of some global supply chains for things like the F-35, where we'll be making some parts and because the F-35 is also used, I'll link Israel as a signatory to that.
There was some
program
agreement that we re-upped with Israel recently for
a drone,
program.
I think.
Yeah,
but I don't. Yeah, I don't know. It feels like 69% of Israel's arms come from the US and 30% come from Germany. So we're not
69%. Nice.
69. Nice.
Yeah, we're not the major contributors.
No,
yeah. But I mean, it's funny because a lot of these, I'm in two minds, because in some ways, given the strategic environment we're in, you kind of want best bang for buck with your military purchases. But I agree, Tom. I don't understand where the expo
Yeah, it feels
comes
like
into
that
play. Like surely there's a better way of doing this.
should be
rather
boring
than-
government bureaucracy somewhere. Like, I feel like hosting it, like, because I don't know. Maybe I'm just being too idealistic here, but I feel that all these things that you're showing off, ideally, you'd never
want to keep them
use
secret. Wouldn't you, and also, wouldn't you want to keep them secret? Why do you want to show? I guess deterrence is the concept. Like you want to show the big shiny tank, so other countries go, "Oh, they've got a big shiny tank. Do I really?"
Yeah, because I would have thought like, I guess we're all not on the same page. I mean, like, so societally, that it's like, I'd rather never use these tanks. Because then people aren't getting killed.
I would have thought that the ideal place for a conference like this would be in Canberra, not in Melbourne. It does seem weird that it is here.
Oh, I mean, you'd still have probably.
There are a lot of
protest there if
defense.
It was a big expo, but
I mean,
you
like,
have
in
it
terms
at the
of-
Department of Defense.
In terms of
Building.
decision makers and people who can buy stuff and like authorize stuff, like Canberra would be the place to go.
Yeah.
Surely.
There are a lot of defense manufacturers in Melbourne, though. Like,
Right,
the Lockheed Martins and all those kind of. It's funny because a lot of these global United States-based companies have their local branches here in Australia, and I guess they're the ones that do a lot of the actual supplying of or manufacturing of any particular weapons systems. But yeah, it's kind of weird that like. I mean, I understand that. Sure, it might be a short hop down the road for BAE Systems, but like, I don't know. Yeah, you'd think Canberra would be a better spot for it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I mean,
But,
with that said, I mean, I have a mate who probably shouldn't give too much detail, but he's like, I've worked on weapon systems that have been deployed in Gaza. Like that's something I've done as part of my work. I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Jesus. Was your next response, how do you sleep at night?
I mean,
that must be tough.
It was my next thought. It wasn't my next thing out of my mouth.
Sentence. Yeah.
The other aspect being is like, your primary customers might not be, there's always the second and third order effects of any sort of defense exporters. Like, oh, sure, you sell the weapons to one country, but then they either don't use them in the way that which was initially contracted and they do some other things with them, or they on-sell them potentially, or, however it,
Oh, yeah.
and all of a sudden rebels in Guatemala are, using different particular weapon systems that were have components, even just the components that are manufactured in, Australia. Guatemala's not a real reference. It's just a funny name of a country that
Speaking
I like.
of
But anyway.
South American country that sounds like
Guatemala
it would be involved in conflict.
it's just a cool name. Guatemala. I love that name.
It's a good name.
Anyway.
Anyway,
We should move on.
Well, I just thought the last sort of point on that I wanted to make was, where the media coverage of a lot of this I found very interesting because I guess as a country when we cover all these sorts of situations, like a lot of our media, I think across the political spectrum of the media is very much on the like law and order good, the cops stopped this situation escalating. Look at them beating the anarchists down, kind of thing.
Beat those hippies.
And seeing it, but like even they're usually not presented as hippies. I find a lot in the media. It's just more like these are people causing chaos, and the police brought them in line, and like
Antifa.
that's the narrative. Yeah, and seeing that narrative play out, but where the captions are things like like it's a photo of like 8 giant dudes, cops pinning like one scrawny guy to the ground, saying
one yellow-haired guy,
anti-war protester, like subdued, and it's like, fuck those anti-war people, huh? Like, it's all like, we beat those people who were against warfare into submission. Fuck them.
And not a great look.
No, and the Premier of Victoria, Jacinta Allen, had a speech in Parliament saying, like condemning the protesters, saying, like, violence will not win. And it's like, yes, violence will not win in stopping us having our violence sale expo. Like,
violence will not win. And the way we overcome that is with...
Is cracking skulls.
Police violence,
Yeah. Yeah. That's sorry, that story you told earlier has really thrown me. Like, I was like, it seems like it attracts people who are really keen just to bash some lefties. And you're like, no, you just straight up said it.
I never met the guy before, but like he
Yeah.
was talking about like, oh, in this time where I got to like ram a guy with my car, and like it was very much like excited to use force. Like that was the vibe that I was getting off this guy. And it's just
It's
like
the boys with their toys.
It
kind
really
of thing,
is.
And
And
like,
it's-
but
yeah.
the toys are battering rams and machine guns and stuff, which as someone who's enjoyed like shooting targets and shooting ranges, I get the fun of using
I get
using
it.
those toys, but I don't want to be a cop. Like and if you are a cop, it shouldn't be the excitement to use weapons.
It was the way it came across to me, and like I said, I don't know the guy. I just met him that day for the first time. It did come across to me like there was a certain level of excitement at the ability to use force. The way he talked about, and then I saw my bosses doing this. I was like, oh, right. Like I pulled out my baton and started smashing out the windows. Like, yeah, I'd never gotten to do that before. That was so exciting and fun. And I was like, I don't think there's a universe where I would be excited about deploying force on people, where I would be excited about hurting people. Like that's how it came across.
I get the thrill of like you go to the what's it called, like the break room or whatever, the whole thing is smashing stuff. Like I can get that as cathartic.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't be experiencing that when you are like, that's arguably you're the arbiters of justice. Like what you're supposed to be.
Yeah,
you're supposed to be keeping the peace. Keeping the peace, you shouldn't be excited to be smashing people's windows.
Yeah, exactly.
If you really want to go and kill people, just join the army. Although that being said, if you go into the interview to the army and you say I want to kill people,
really
you won't get into the army because they'll be like, no.
Adam, we had some very long war crimes inquiries that I think shows if you really want to kill people, don't go in the army because then you'll commit some war crimes.
But there is a certain type of personality that enjoys the concept of violence, and
I understand that people that
I don't think they should be police officers.
There is a certain kind of personality, the kind of person who has a willingness to deploy force and use force and have that be part of their job is someone who, like the kind of person who gravitates towards being a cop is generally someone who's probably more politically conservative, right? Like generally has some of those, more kind of like repressive type leanings. So I don't want to say like fascist exactly, but like that whole kind of like law and order mindset of like putting down protesters is like an inherently conservative mindset. And so, I do find that there's an inherent tension there between, and I think it's why they crack down so much more on leftist protesters, because it's an opportunity to like physically, literally stick the boot into your political opponents in a way that's like state sanctioned. I think that is kind of part of it. I'm not saying all cops, like I know Tom has has feelings about all cops, but because you do encounter cops that are not like that. And have more of an interest in like community policing and aren't interested in violence and all that sort of thing. But would I say that there's a higher preponderance of those sorts of like, far right kind of like G'd up people who are keen to use violence that are attracted to the police force as opposed to other professions? Yeah, I think so. Like without looking at any data, that's how it seems.
I'd liken it to it's the same as the whole not all men but yes men mentality of like, I'm sure that there are always exceptions to these rules.
Not all men.
It's not a problem.
Not all men, but it's generally men.
Yeah. So like, maybe not all cops are bastards, but a fucking lot of them are.
It's a higher
enough that I think we can just say
a higher bastard per capita ratio than than other industries, perhaps.
100%.
Speaking of other industries, let's talk about government as opposed to policing. So the social media age limits are about to go forward to Parliament for a vote ahead of the next election, as announced by Anthony Albanese. So we don't know what... So the Albanese government has planned to impose a minimum age for teenagers accessing social media and gaming platforms, with legislation to be introduced to Parliament before the next election. So he announced it on Tuesday, but they haven't announced what the age will be. So they're still taking consultation on all of
Or
this.
it'll how it'll work.
Or how it'll
Yeah,
work.
how
or
they're
how
going
do
to
you
do it.
verify?
how do you, yeah. So
This is
there's an age verification trial, which is happening right now to see how that might work. And I suppose depending on the outcome of that, then they'll determine, what the legislation exactly is going to look like. Now, this is predicated on a report prepared by Robert French for the South Australian Premier, Peter Malinauskas, which is, sort of laying out this kind of framework on a state level. Now, he's advocated for the age of 14. So assuming it looks anything like that, then presumably that would be the minimum age for the national framework or something like that. So
Don't I know this is not government, was more terms of service sort of stuff, but I know the terms of service, I thought, for things like Facebook and
Instagram is
all that
minimum
sort
of 13.
Is 13, right? So, but I don't get beyond that, beyond legislating that their rules have to be that. How can they?
Or they're going to have
how
to.
can they
Basically,
enforce
it would force. Basically, you would have to have Zuckerberg's going to have to build, functionality within those social
put
media
your ID
products
in.
to have ID verification. And then there's a whole other question around are they taking your ID? And there's a couple of different ways they proposed verifying it, but one of them simply was uploading your ID, which I'm not a big fan of personally.
So the way,
Hell no.
So I think the way for most of these age verification type schemes that I've seen outlined in the past in previous iterations, largely to do with pornography and things like that, is that you would upload whatever it is, your ID, that is then hashed, right? So the entity that is taking your ID card doesn't actually have access to it. It's all encrypted. That gets sent off to some sort of government server, which verifies, yes, this is real, sends back a token that says, yep, correct, this person is of age, and then that information is destroyed. So in a scenario like that, where it's the social media network isn't just hanging on to your personal information. I mean, the fact is you're giving them so much other kinds of personally identifiable information anyway, just by being on the platform and using the platform and telling them where you had lunch and where you're taking a shit and all this sort of stuff. You're giving away a lot of information anyway. So it's I don't know that that's really going to protect people.
You're using social media differently to the way I am.
Yeah, you're telling people where you're taking a shit.
I mean, if you say I stopped off using my geolocation data, if you can see I stopped off for 20 to 40 minutes at a local public restroom, pretty safe to say I took a shit.
That's a long, well, let's not open that up.
And if I tweet that shit, then I definitely took a shit.
Is this?
Yes,
I mean,
that's
the thing that struck me about this, and there's a few other little things that they're trying to do, is it's the last gasp of the sitting year here in Australia, and an election will be held, we're assuming, early to mid next year.
Yeah, by May, I think they have to have had it.
So it does feel like they're just trying to ram stuff through at the moment a little bit. This sort of came out of nowhere a little bit to my mind. I don't know how long they've been sort of had this in the works. I don't know if it was an election promise. It just seems I understand that it's something that a lot of people have concerns over. It just feels like it came out of nowhere a little bit.
I'm all for banning social media for kids. And frankly, I think we should ban it for adults as well. I'm not convinced of the adult capacity to use social media in a way that is not mindless and destructive either. So,
yeah, but I guess it's one of those things. Oh, I mean, outside of outright erase it from the world. I mean, hard to do, but at least that would, I think, the only way that would make it sort of effective. Because I think it's too late to do something like this that would fixes sort of anything. I mean, Alice and I were discussing this the other day, where it's not allowing, if by some way they're able to be no one under this particular age is allowed to use it, and whatever age verification they're doing actually is bulletproof and they're not on it anyway. If you're trying to curb things, somehow. If you're trying to curb things people under that age shouldn't be able to have access to see shit from Andrew Tate and any all that sort of stuff. I think it would just change back to what it was like I remember as a kid in like the 90s and stuff like that, was maybe, it's like such and such at school's older brother had like showed me this thing, and now I'm going to tell you about it on the schoolyard. And it's like, okay, so they'll still get exposed to it somehow. Someone who is of the age will still be able to do it if it still exists. So it's like, yeah, I feel like that won't fix anything. And then also when I read the element, because I know we're talking about it in social media terms here, but when they've said the definition of what they're calling like a digital social platform is loose enough that it would encompass gaming. Like they've said things like Roblox, the game Roblox, or maybe like FIFA, like things that are like G-rated with online multiplayer where people can communicate with each other. Would be included in this. It's not.
If we can get the kids off Call of Duty, though, I'm all for that.
But,
get them off. Get the kids off COD. That's all I
Adam,
can say.
Theoretically, the age classification should be doing that, but it's not, is it? But like,
I guess this goes
anyway,
one step further in that there's sort of an enforcement mechanism. And look, as someone who's got a young child, I imagine I project him forward, 13 years, right? And I think, am I gonna want him online and have his classmates online? Because once all of your classmates are online and on social media, you kind of
have to be.
It's one of those things of like, oh, well, everyone else is doing it, right? And I think the longer you can delay that, yes, it's not going to be successful, right? Yes, you're going to have ways around it, and kids are clever and they can get around things. But to the extent that you can delay, for each year that you can stop young women like comparing themselves or their bodies and developing neuroses, or stop young men from bullying each other. And, like for every additional year that you can try and like push that back, I think that's to everyone's psychological good. Like the internet, as we often say, is a wretched hive of scum and villainy. And if you take the impetus of like you and your immediate social circle are not really allowed to be online, it takes away that impetus of like, oh, well, then I have to, I see that a lot where parents feel bullied into letting their kids have a phone, have social media, have this, have that. And it's like, if it's not legal, then you as a parent are more entitled to turn around and say, well, it's not legal. Like, wait till you're 16. Sorry, buddy. Like, my hands are tied, right? Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, kids, like the teenage, stuff will happen anyway. It's a question of how amplified it is with or without social media.
But we see there's data on this now. We know for a fact that social media, particularly image-based stuff like Instagram, has a detrimental psychological effect, particularly on young women.
On body dysmorphia,
eating disorders, anorexia, like all of the, and the algorithms push you further down these holes. You might be starting out looking at fit content, and then fitspiration, and then it becomes thinspiration, and then it becomes anorexia. Like you get pushed further and further down those rabbit holes. There is a direct pipeline between, and I think was it Johan Hari or someone wrote a book about this recently, where talking about how specifically social media on mobile phones, like kicking off, we can see the graphs like starting to drastically alter in 2013 when it became highly available to young women on mobile phones. We can see the effects that it's having on young people's mental health, and it's increasing incredibly negative, right? So,
The other thing, I'm not sure, does this include like things like chat, like Messenger, for instance, like because that's tied to Facebook, but it's just a messaging app.
Yeah, potentially.
How does that break down? There's a few details. I feel like it was. Anyway, they've proposed this, and I'm just not sure. I mean, they're using the South Australian report, which includes a draft bill as the basis for the federal work. And Jacinda Allen in Victoria has said that she's looking into this as well. And the reason being, of course, is this was all brought up at National Cabinet a little while ago. So, I don't know. We'll see how it shakes out. But it feels like a pretty drastic thing to sort of do at this stage of the technology.
I've worked
evolution,
I've worked at tech companies, right? I see how they approach, the user experience and the way they try and tweak things and they A/B test things. And what if we put this button? What if we make it slightly larger? What if we put it over there? Does that get more interaction? Does it get more more usability? Does it make it stickier for the user? Like the greatest minds of our generation are not working on curing cancer. They're working on what color button makes people click on it more and keeps them on the platform slightly longer, right?
Engagement.
And so what you've got is like all of Silicon Valley and its entire army of like informed data nerds who are using the wealth of their experience to addict your brain and like point it at the mind of like a 13-year-old child here in Australia. And that just doesn't seem like a fair fight. Like, I just don't think that that's really a good place to be starting kids out on. Like, as I understand it's a reality of life. I understand screens and social media. Like, these are things they are going to have to understand how to navigate as adults. But maybe just delay it just by like 2, 3, 4 years. Like, they don't need to become adults right away. I remember there was someone who was talking about, I think it was the girl who plays Wednesday Addams on
Jenna Ortega.
Jenna Ortega was talking about the first thing she saw on social media when she signed on for it was
I heard this story.
Someone sending her a dick pic, unsolicited, a grown man sending her an unsolicited dick pic when she was like a teenager. And I was like, yeah, we don't need this. Like, there's no need to. I think Jordan Harbinger, the podcaster, has talked about this as well. He goes, when I was setting up a social media account, my daughter. Was it my daughter? Anyway, he set up a fake social media account for whatever reason as a young woman just to like see what would turn up. And he said the amount of like vile harassment, sexual content and stuff that he got from adult age males was like terrifying to the extent that he won't allow his kids on social media now. Like, I forget what reason he was doing it for, but like, we do need to protect kids from this. It sucks. The internet sucks.
Yeah. For all, we were talking about this with technologies, like, well, I think it was AI we were more talking about last time, but like, like, what is the good of this? It's like the internet has a lot of goods, but we've fucking ruined it. Because people are people and people are garbage. But I don't know. And I think just going back to the gaming point of things, I just think because of that, I reckon it's just not going to happen because they're going to get lobbied into, like, it's going to be neutered from lobbying. Like,
Sony's going to be like, what?
There's a lot of money at stake,
EA seeing if FIFA, and FIFA points and kids buying fucking FIFA Ultimate Team packs or whatever being ripped off the table, they'd be shitting bricks. Like Roblox, its whole economy, it's a free-to-play game, but it's very popular with young people.
Well, that's the thing. It's like gaming is also like a completely different environment to what it was growing up. I remember being on the opposite side of this argument, being like, gaming, violent video games aren't to blame for people's behavior, and like gaming as a thing.
I feel it's not the violent game that does it. It's the dudes that you're playing it with who are just shouting the N-word repeatedly while you're trying to play a game of Call of Duty.
The theory that I had was that things that you do in game or playing in games don't affect real life. But that was with regard to violence, not with regard to
the actual social interaction.
The social interaction, people telling you to kill yourself and, it's calling you the N-word. And like, it's just not a good environment for kids, right? So,
oh, hell no.
I find myself starting to sound like an old fuddy-duddy nowadays, being like, it's the bloody kids with the social medias and the games. But
well, I guess like so many things, it's a thing where good education around these things is what would go the furthest, but it's getting people to it's the same thing with like pornography and stuff, right, as well.
But even the best education in the world is not going to convince you as a young woman to not compare your body against people who are photoshopping fake versions of their body and putting it, like, the best education in the world is still not going to prepare you for what that's going to do to your brain, We've seen we ran an experiment for the last 15 years or so, and the data's in, and it's like, this is brain rot, and not just for the reasons you think. Like, this hurts your brain, and we have data on this now. It's not debatable. Anyway,
speaking of having the data, the RBA is in the news again this week. It's in the news every week, to be fair, to some extent, but basically
it's in my bank account every month. That's for sure.
Yeah. In 2023, there was a review done at the RBA as part of commissioned, I think, by the Albanese government, and they basically made a bunch of recommendations.
Do you want to hear about some of the recommendations? So this is from 2023. Workers will get a voice on the Reserve Bank of Australia board, and the central bank will give equal weighting to achieving full employment and fighting inflation, according to wide-ranging changes following the first major RBA review in 4 decades. Well, you'll be pleased to know that a year later, both of those things have been drastically watered down. Workers will not get a voice on the RBA, and the wording about achieving both full employment and fighting inflation has been watered down as well at Angus Taylor's recommendation. So there are some other changes that they're making, but the big things that we thought would make it perhaps a little bit more equitable have been removed. So tell us about these, the Peter Dutton opposing these changes now a year later.
Oh, well, I mean, so to be clear, some of these changes they've already been implemented, but there are a number of them that require legislation. And one of them is, and this is probably the big thing that came out of this review, was that they were going to split the board in two. So you'd have a board that's focused on governance and another one that's specifically on economic policy. Now,
and the people that would populate the economic policy board had to be people with like
economists, as it turns
backgrounds,
out.
which apparently wasn't a thing until now.
No, so apparently
It's
at the
just
moment, the way the board works,
people from
it's just
people from the board, like they could be and
Well, they're
senior
mostly-
business people and like
senior business people. That's kind of what's in there at the moment. So behind the scenes, Jim Chalmers who's the treasurer, has been working with what's his name, Angus Taylor, who's the shadow treasurer. And they even had a couple of meetings. They were getting along, and then allegedly, this is what Jim Chalmers is inferring. But basically, Jim Chalmers is inferring that Angus Taylor went to Peter Dutton and said, "Hey, can we get behind?" Because basically, Labor need the coalition support to get this through the Senate, because the Greens and the crossbench are all saying a bunch of other stuff that's not within the scope of the policy. So they thought the best strategy is to go with the coalition on this because they want to be strong economic managers and yada, yada, yada. Anyway, so Angus Taylor goes to Peter Dutton, and Peter Dutton allegedly goes, "Nah, we're not doing that."
Yeah, nah.
So after all these months of negotiation, and this is Jim Chalmers had a press conference in this area in Parliament House, which is normally reserved for policy announcements and big, sort of like things that concern the whole country. And he called this press conference together, and all the journalists were like, "What are you announcing, Jim?" And Chalmers was like, "This fuck Angus Taylor," and just laid into him for like 20 minutes.
Yeah, Angus Taylor's full of shit is the big policy announcement. Here's we've got a little clip from it here, which we'll play.
Well, Angus Taylor's been rolled again, this time on the Reserve Bank reforms. When the review came out, this is what Angus Taylor said. The recommendations of the review will clarify the Reserve Bank's monetary policy role, strengthen its governance arrangements, improve the transparency of its decision-making, and deepen its economic expertise. It is essential the implementation of the review be as bipartisan as possible. So he has been rolled once again. This is becoming a very regular occurrence. The position that has been reported from the coalition is irresponsible. It's disappointing. I have met 3 times with the Shadow Treasurer since April of 2023. I've also arranged in-person briefings with the Treasury and with the Reserve Bank Review Panel, again since April 2023. 1 briefing with the RBA Review Panel and 2 briefings with the Treasury, and 3 meetings with myself, as well as the exchanges all of the letters that you've seen reported on. He raised in that consultation, the Shadow Treasurer raised 6 issues, and I have accommodated his view on every single one of those 6 issues that he has raised. And let me run you through them. He wanted the chair of the governance board to be the governor, and I facilitated that. He wanted flexibility in term limits, and I facilitated that as well. He wanted senior RBA executives to have oversight of the operation. I made sure that the Deputy Governor was a member of the governance board. He wanted to ensure that the dual mandate should exclude references to equal weight, and so I made sure that the legislation and the statement on conduct don't mention equal weight for the dual mandate. He asked that Section 11 be retained. I'm proposing that we retain Section 11 and focus it more appropriately. And he asked that all current members of the RBA board should move to the Monetary Policy Board, and I've proposed an amendment so that all current board members move to the Monetary Policy Board unless they don't want to. So I have accommodated the Shadow Treasurer on all 6 of the issues that he raised in the consultation on this really important legislation. I've also...
And so you've got to wonder
Amazing.
why did he, after all this consultation, why has he now turned around and said no? And it's basically because the Liberals are just doing a classic conservative, like Republican type stance of, well, it's because it's your idea, we're not going to do it. And what they've said publicly is
LNP says no.
We're afraid that, Labor's going to stack the board with all its cronies, trying to use this, again, it's an American style argument of like, as if somehow that people on the RBA board are there for life or some sort of. It's just full of shit. Peter Dutton just wants, and the Liberal Party coalition think tank that sort of, is driving their strategy is just saying no because it's a Labor idea, and they've basically, I guess, wasted a bunch of Labor time on this for the last 2 years.
Yeah,
it's also like hearing him list out being like I know he's sort of talking about he's raising Angus Taylor, like what he was doing in regards to Angus Taylor's feedback, etc. As a point of like, oh, we were working together, and it's not like that he's not getting anything that he sort of wanted, like sort of highlighted as why is he opposing this. But it does also sound like being like, oh, I just gave him everything he wanted. Whatever Angus wants, Angus gets.
Cool negotiating, Jim.
Yeah. It's just like, oh yeah, he wanted this to happen, it's happening. He wanted that to happen, it's also happening. He wanted like a free pig every month, he got that too. Like, we give him everything he wants.
He wanted to take my wife for a nice seafood dinner, and I let him. Just whatever you want, Angus.
Yeah, just giving we give the LNP anything they ask for. So it's just kind of the vibe very, very strange.
There was a moment there where it seemed like he was about to say like I accommodated the shit out of him.
Yeah.
So I was like, I think he almost swore that.
Yeah.
But the funny, it's so dumb, and this is what annoys me about Australian politics, is they'll have a review, they spend all this money on the review, they spend a year drafting up the legislation, and they get to fucking point A of like, let's make this thing happen, and then nothing happens. And everyone's like, why is the situation not getting any better? Like, why are we these institutions? Well, it's because people want to play politics 6 months out from an election, or 4 months out from an election. And they may well, but like I guarantee you, if for some reason the coalition get in, they'll implement this thing in their own version.
Meanwhile, the unproven allegations against the CFMEU, that gets legislated right away. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that we can all agree on. Like it's they can
make stuff happen when they actually
care about it. It is interesting.
Speaking of interesting, Sydney MP Alex Greenwich has been awarded $140,000 after suing former One Nation New South Wales leader Mark Latham. And small, sometimes defamation works, guys.
Well, yeah, for once, like a defamation lawsuit came out for the best for the person doing the suing for defamation. Like that rarely happens. Usually it'd be like, oh, you're suing for defamation, then we find out that you're like a secret warlord or something. So
the defamation was basically that March last year, Mr. Latham made a bunch of tweets basically that were incredibly homophobic. I won't repeat them, but they were not particularly nice, and just like very, like they weren't even veiled. They were like,
just very aggressive. So
it was honestly shocking. I remember being like, oh, he's tweeted some really homophobic stuff. Okay, yeah, fuck. And then I read it and I was like, oh wow.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
wow. So for those who don't know, I'm obviously not going to repeat the tweet, but so I'll give you an understanding of what it said. So keeping in mind that defamation is a thing. So Mr. Latham posted the tweet in March last year after Mr. Greenwich described him as, quote, a disgusting human being, unquote, which obviously truth is defense on that, in comments to the media. He replied with, quote, disgusting, how does that compare with ... before referring to sexual activity in words described by Mr. Greenwich's counsel as revolting. So basically what he describes there is the act of, homosexual sex.
Two men having sex.
In very graphic detail. And turns out, that is defamation. And he has been awarded $140,000 out of Mark Latham's pocket for in damages, which I have to say, anytime Mark Latham loses 140 grand is a good day.
Oh yeah, and it's
I
amazing just the kind of. Oh, sorry, Adam.
No, I was just going. I just want to remind everyone that One Nation, it's not One Nation, well, One Nation as well, but Mark Latham in particular was once the federal Labor leader and almost became prime minister at one point.
He was almost prime minister until he nearly killed John Howard with a handshake, and that broke people's brains. Allegedly, he did do the handshake that was very vigorous. Like it probably wasn't about to.
Well, I think he resigned because he lost the election, but he also had to go at a taxi driver or some shit, which was kind of his political undoing because but same sort of thing. He had an aggressive outburst.
He's just a weird, angry guy.
Yeah. But it's fantastic seeing to hear his Mark Latham's lawyers' arguments as to why this is all okay is just so strange. Like they use the defense of qualified privilege, given they're both politicians, but this was done on Twitter.
Yeah, it doesn't.
You didn't say this on the floor of Parliament, where all those qualified parliamentary privilege things kind of apply. You can't just tweet whatever you want if you're a politician and say it's qualified privilege.
Can you imagine being the barrister being just getting across your desk?
Listen, Mark.
Listen,
buddy. Why'd you have to
breaking the law?
I will take your money, Mark. I will take your money.
Yeah.
But you ain't getting it back.
Look, it is $5,000 an hour, but did you have to talk about, the poo? I really don't understand why. It just shows the kind of brain rot that Twitter has. This is the sort of thing that if you had to call a press conference and get in front of some cameras and say this, you probably wouldn't say this shit, but it's some guy.
You'd think about it more.
Some asshole just angry tweeting while he's on the shitter and, saying the most disgusting, vile things that you would never say to another person's face in real life. And then this is how people get in trouble. Don't Twitter is bad. It is brain rot.
Yeah.
Don't be on Twitter.
The other part of
he
it
said,
is
on Twitter.
Yeah, they did qualified privilege was one argument, but the other one was honest opinion. It's Your Honor, it's my honest opinion that gays are disgusting. That's fine, right?
Clip that.
It's fine.
Someone clip that.
Fucking hell. It should be that's worse. You see how that's worse.
You see how that's worse, right?
Yeah, you see how it's worse that it's your honest opinion that a certain group of people are subhuman.
Your Honor, I just think they're less than.
Yeah. It's just absolutely crazy. So, a feel-good end to a defamation case for once, where, someone did something real awful, and they were found that it was real awful, and they're punished for doing the really awful thing.
Sometimes when you wish upon a star, dreams do come true. Mm-hmm. On that note,
sometimes works.
The system occasionally works. On that note, we have been, we are, and we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Make sure you follow us on all the bullshit social medias that have, do, or ever will exist that continue to rot your ever-loving brains. At our handle, Unnatural Show. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and mother-flipping TikTok. Make sure you follow me on Twitter and Instagram at George Tsipos.
You can follow me on Twitter at Tom D. Heath.
You can follow me down to the Weapons Expo in Melbourne, where I'll be looking at the really cool tank.
Ooh, tactical. I love this webbing. What is that?
It's actually, for someone who...
Oh, is that mesh? Oh, that's nice. Yeah. That feels good. What is that?
Is that Kevlar? Is that nylon?
Wow,
yeah, nylon.
That's high grade.
What's the there is a product actually which is using don't worry.
Kevlar?
Not
Kevlar, it's don't worry, it's gone.
Thanks for just absolutely stalling out the momentum there. Love your faces. We'll see you next week.
Can you bring me back one of those popcorn grenades?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.